So you sent the documents over yesterday, the deck, the financials, the ownership structure, the client list. It's 8 years of work. It makes money, it runs well, people trust you. I opened the folder this morning and I found 3 things that could cost you in any conversation with a serious buyer or somebody who may want to lend you money for your business. You don't know that these things are there. It's not your fault. It's because you've been inside the business and not seeing it from the outside. This video tells you exactly what these things are. Here's the situation most founders I work with are actually in. The business is real, the revenue is strong, your team functions well, and something external has arrived, or it's about to. Maybe it's a private equity fund with a mandate and a timeline, a bank wanting a formal memorandum before it lends to you, someone doing quiet due diligence on a potential partnership with your company before they commit to anything. Suddenly, the business that's been running perfectly well needs to look a certain way to people who have never met you and before they make a decision on your business. I've sat on the other side of that table for 16 years now. GCC infrastructure funds, aviation, healthcare, capital markets. I was that external examiner and I know exactly what to look for. Reading the documents, flagging the issues, and quietly pricing that risk in that nobody will fully explain to your face. And I've seen 5 things that show up in any examination, in any sector, in any market. And almost none of these businesses had any idea of what they were. Founders who walk into these situations having already dealt with what needs addressing and having already done the work, these conversations go differently. The ones who haven't done these things spend the first hour explaining things which could have been fixed 6 months ago. The window between this conversation is coming and this conversation is happening now is usually between 6 to 18 months, and it closes fast. Dubai, Riyadh, London, the sector doesn't matter. Same structure every time. Let me tell you what I actually find. In practice, real businesses, in the first 10 minutes of reading an actual folder. The first thing is client concentration, almost always invisible to the founder because the client in question feels like a relationship. You've known them for 6 years. They pay on time, good people, but I open the numbers and I see 40%, 60% of the revenue comes from a single client. And that's a single point of failure for any reader. And it's the first question any serious fund or bank will ask. If you have no clear answer, the conversation stops there. Addressing it means showing in writing with data that you know that this concentration exists. You understand the exposure and what your pipeline looks without that client. A clear breakdown of revenue across your top 10 clients with notes on where new business is being developed. Specific, documented, and the conversation moves on quickly because it's explained and understood. The second thing is related party transactions, which make complete sense when they were set up. This turns up everywhere in the companies I looked at in the Gulf. It could be the office leased from a family company, or a director doubling up as a key supplier, service agreements with different group companies which nobody ever formally wrote down. They were legitimate and sensible at the time. They made sense. But to an external examiner, and I've been that examiner now for 16 years, it doesn't look that way. It looks exactly the kind of arrangement to move money around without transparency. And perception is the starting point in any due diligence process. You need to explain any related party arrangement clearly with documented evidence. If you skip the documentation, the examiner will assume the worst and price it in to any deal or transaction. So you just need 2 sentences per arrangement. Why the arrangement exists and what the terms are. If you do that for every related party that you have, you're way ahead of any founder-led business that I've come across in the region. Document them clearly and be ready to explain them before anyone asks you. And the third thing is key person dependency. Almost all founders underestimate this. This is about what happens to the business, to revenue, if you were to step away from the business for 3 months. Client relationships, decisions that can be only made by you. If I read all your documentation and I see no process, no second operator in the room, no backup procedures. That's a structural flag. What I'm looking for is evidence that the business extends beyond one single person. Someone who signs off decisions independently. A written process for handling major client problems without the founder being in the process. Anything that can show that the structure can carry weight on its own. Private equity funds hate this especially. A business entirely dependent on one person is a liability to the buyer, and banks feel it too. Even a partnership conversation can be difficult when they realize that the business is reliant on one single human being. There are practical ways to show depth before someone else asks you to prove it. A second signatory on any major decisions, for example. Documented escalation structures. Evidence that at least one other person in the business has the authority to act. A paper trail, that's often enough. This one often takes the longest to address. Naming it clearly is the first step. And most of the founders who do this work find that the business operates better on a day-to-day basis, separate from any external process entirely. And the fourth thing is governance that looks great on paper, but falls apart upon deeper examination. There's a board or something similar that functions like one. You even keep minutes. There's a legal structure, but the decisions that actually shape the business, the major contracts, the capital allocation, the strategic pivots, those decisions are not in your meeting minutes. Sometimes the business can be running really well and making a lot of money, but the actual decisions are based on the chairman's memory or a handful of text messages that are not properly documented. So there's a strong performance, but the documentation told an entirely different story. And for better or worse, any fund or examiner, they work on documentation above all. And the documents are the business for any serious examiner. What's written down is what any examiner can work with. Anything else doesn't exist from their perspective. If it's not written down, it's not done. A business where the real decisions are kept inside someone's head or in a group chat, these read as badly governed, regardless of how well they are actually run. And the standard here is much lower than most founders assume. A written record showing a decision, how it was made, by whom and when. That's simple. Something much simpler than a formal legal document. A clear, dated record of actual decisions made by people with the authority to make them. The work you have to do is disciplined. Decisions need to be recorded somewhere that show a rational decision-making process. The fifth thing, and this is one that often surprises people, is an ownership structure that no one can explain in real terms. Who owns what and why was it structured that way? In the GCC, ownership structures are often across multiple different countries and jurisdictions. We have different holding companies and operating entities, and it can get quite confusing. You might have local partners and foreign intermediaries or nominee arrangements that made total sense 10 years ago. If I open a folder and see all of these arrangements and they're not properly justified with a clear rationale, then I will add a discount to any deal. Try explaining your ownership structure in plain language in less than 2 minutes. Start at the top. Who ultimately controls your business? Then work down. If you start saying, oh, it's complicated, or there's some history here, you've already created a problem for yourself. An examiner who hears this will spend an hour going through every line. You want to be the one doing all of the explaining before anyone else asks. Take more than 2 minutes, and that's a flag in itself. Often, something hasn't been written down or recorded properly. The examiner in any room can't tell the difference between something unexplained or something wrong. I was reviewing the acquisition of a mid-sized infrastructure business in the Gulf. It was a serious business, it had a great track record, but I found something in the first session, and it was a related party arrangement that had not been flagged in the previous 3 years of reporting. It was sitting right there in the documentation, but it was never fully explained. The documentation was thin and the rationale had never been written down. I asked about it directly, and the answer was, well, it's the way things have always been done. And that phrase is the most expensive in any due diligence process. The person on the other side of the table hears it and starts discounting already. That arrangement might have been perfectly fine, but nobody had done the work to explain why. What you have to take from this is very simple. The things that cost founders in any external examination are often not fatal. They're fixable, but they're invisible from the outside because you've been there long enough to see that that's just the way the business works. An outside read before that moment arrives is preparation. Founders who do it walk into that situation differently. The others spend the first hour explaining things that could have been addressed earlier. If you want to know what your business looks like from the outside, book the business read at havenstone.me. One call, one fee, done. Fully remote wherever you are.